Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and this is going to be our first episode of Liberator's Log in the Captain's Log series. The reason that I'm doing these videos is because I want to make sure everybody can be a better pilot, and the clip that you're watching right here is a pretty good example of why I'm doing it. You're not only responsible for yourself as the pilot, but you've also got a gunner and possibly a tail gunner whose life is in your hands, and you can see this guy didn't have a whole lot of respect for either of our lives. So no real harm done. I know people are still learning, so I'm hoping to accelerate that a little bit. What you're watching here is actually just me tooling around in the warp gate a little bit, trying to get a better feel for what this vehicle is actually capable of. I suggest everybody do this. The first step towards learning advanced maneuvers is getting a feel for the vehicle, and doing it inside the warp gate where you're invincible, or outside where you've got a lot more room but not as many enemies around. It's going to be a good place. Basically, pitch, roll, use your yaw, see what the vertical thrusters do. I'm going to be talking about advanced maneuvers probably in the next video, but there's so many different roles that you can play as the Liberator pilot. You can be air to ground, you can be air to air. Sometimes you're going to be high altitude bombing, while other times you're going to be doing low hit and runs. It's important to know what your vehicle does and how it can react so you can put yourself into good situations and get out of bad ones as quickly as possible. This is the first step into learning how to do that. So let's talk about setups a little bit. Alright guys, so the servers are trying to go offline, so I'm going to try and squeeze this in real quick. But when we're talking about the setup that we're going to be using for most of these videos, it's kind of the setup that I've been working on. Now, I'm going to change things up a little bit as we go through this, and kind of like the ESF Captain's Log, the Liberator one's going to be, as I learn, I'm going to be bringing more and more into it. So, the setup that I'm starting out with is I upgraded the primary weapon to the Tank Buster. Now, the Tank Buster is the secondary option to the Vector, which is your initial starting gun, and it's a night and day difference better weapon. It got nerfed a little bit in one of the patches, but it just tears everything up. Tanks, enemy vehicles. The only downside is it's kind of got a sporadic rate of, or a sporadic cone of fire. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Your three weapons that you've got for your main cannon is going to be your Shredder, the Dalton, and the Zephyr. The Zephyr is a 6-shot cannon, which I really like. The Dalton is the 150mm big boy. He does a ton of damage. And then the Shredder actually got a buff. It is a much more viable option. But if you're attacking ground targets, the Dalton and Zephyr are going to be better. We'll be getting into specifics on which one is the better way to go here in a little bit. And then as far as your tertiary weapon, this is going to be your tail gunner. You start off with the Drake, which is actually pretty terrible. The Walker was terrible, but got a buff and is really, really strong, gets air to air. And then the Bulldog is the one for when you feel sorry for the tail gunner who doesn't get any XP and actually wants to play against the ground. So, as far as these options down here, utility, I started out using flares. Again, I'll talk about it more. I found the Afterburner to be a lot more effective overall, and I'll give you some examples of why. Defense, I went with the composite armor as well. And then for performance, I'm using the high G airframe. The other options that you have are going to be the Precision Bomber airframe and the Racer high-speed airframe. I personally just don't see a whole lot of value in either one of them. Again, you don't really know until you test them, so I'm 99% sure I'm going to be sticking with high G, so I'm going to sort this one out all the way, and then I'll get into the other two. So if there's anything that you want to see, let me know, but that's going to be the basis of our loadouts as we go through the first couple episodes of this. And then appearance down here is pretty much just me pimping my ride. So, the other options that you actually have in the defense slot are going to be your nanite auto repair system, which means that you're going to repair when you're not taking damage. The vehicle stealth is obviously going to keep you off the radar better, and it's going to take a little bit longer for the lock-ons to actually take place. And then the composite armor is going to be reducing flak. The first tier is 4%, and then it jumps to 6, 8, 10. Now, you get bigger jumps when you're actually talking about the fighters, but the Liberator itself is already so much more durable that it doesn't need as much of a jump. Now, just from my initial thoughts, I'm probably going to be sticking most to composite armor and stealth. Nanite auto repair system sounds good in theory, but you need to not take damage for 14 seconds for it to even kick in, and then it's only giving you a 2% heal every 5 seconds. To me, that's just not really worth it. The utility slot, just to get into more details, I said I'm not really using the flare. I started with it and I thought it was okay. I got into the afterburner, and the first tier just unlocks it. After that, you get to regenerate your afterburner speeds faster. It's actually really useful to have. It's not a huge afterburn like you get out of a fighter, but it still helps you get up and get out, or just to get to your target a little bit quicker. Ejection system isn't anything I'm ever going to use. It's expensive, and I don't really see the point. I can land without dying. And then as far as this fire suppression system, this is something else you'll probably see me test out. I've flown a Liberator that actually has this, and I really like it. Once you get down into the red, meaning your vehicle's on fire, you can hit this button, and you're actually going to put out the flames and regenerate a little bit of health. It seems pretty useful, especially if you don't want to land or you need a little bit further so your tail gunner can get the kills in. But I don't personally have it unlocked, but it was cool when I did. The thing I wanted to wrap up with today is actually pitching up and pitching down during turns. When you think about it being in a fighter, it's most common for you to actually turn to one side and pitch up. That works well because all of your weapons are forward facing, so you're going to be seeing whatever you're firing at. Now, you've got a nose gun and a Liberator, but most of your damage is going to be coming from your gunner on your belly. If you're doing a pitch-up turn, chances are he's not going to be facing your target. And if you want to stay on your target longer, you need to do a pitch-down turn. So what you're kind of seeing here. Envision what you've seen in other video games out of AC-130s. They circle the battlefield while the main cannon is staying on target. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just rotating my craft about 45 degrees. It doesn't really matter as long as your gunner can see the target. And I am just using forward, and I'm kind of just using pitch down. Now, pitch down on a Liberator is actually really sensitive, especially if you have it mounted to a button on your mouse. So you really need to almost just tap it occasionally or just drag your mouse for pitch down. Either way, and then I use the A and D keys to kind of stabilize the turn, depending upon which way I'm going. Now, the most common thing you see Liberator pilots do is actually just hover in place like you see here, and unleash hell from above. Now, that works really well because it's going to give your gunner a really clear view of what's going on. They can readjust their shots easier. The problem is, with the adjustments that they've made to the flak system, it makes surviving a lot harder. Not to mention, when you're staying still, it's really easy for unguided missiles to hit you. Lock-on launchers don't do a lot of damage, about 10% maybe. When you get hit by a dumb rocket, it's going to do a lot more damage, and that's what really gets you in trouble. If you've got a couple heavies below you that are tired of you killing them, they are going to shoot those rockets and do a lot of damage. And when you've got Maxes and Skyguards and turrets that are also hitting you, it's a really bad plan overall. Sometimes you can plan on staying put for a few seconds, get your damage in, and then be a mobile target. Either way, you want to make sure that you've mastered the ability to circle around your target while you're unleashing the damage from above. Alright, so I said I was going to keep the first episode simple, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Probably this weekend I'm going to be putting another one out where we're going to talk about some of the more advanced maneuvers you can actually pull in the vehicle. I'm going to talk about different roles that you actually play when you're flying this big old bomber in the sky. How important communication is, and good things that you can do to make sure that you're staying effective, because when you're in a Liberator, you're a team. Talk about the difference between the Zephyr and the Dalton, air-to-air combat, because you don't just have to be a target, you can be a force in the sky as well. Using the Tank Buster and how you can follow through with your gunner, airframe comparisons, and a whole lot more. So that's kind of a taste of some of the information that's going to be coming. Hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this, but make sure you stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more. So if you haven't yet, hit that sub button, thumbs up, all that good stuff. And I will talk to you guys later. Oh, and before I head out, make sure that you leave suggestions on what you want to see in future episodes for the Liberator, because I want to make sure I get everything you guys want covered. All right, that's it. Now I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.